Frosh Week. It's a deeply rooted ritual. At University of Ottawa, known as 101 Week, Friday brings the first big party of the first year away from home. Anne-Marie Roy is student president.
One more water. I have 32 boxes total.
She's in charge of preparations for what can be a messy evening.
If you have a bag, you got this one.
For all the excesses, the one she battles most is how much Frosh Week is sexed up.
There was a guy at the boat cruise the other night who had "Suck My Dick Whore" on his t-shirt. And I thought, what? Like, we put stickers over it, like we marker them out, or we put duct tape on the t-shirts this year because it's still an issue on our campus.
At St. Mary's, a YouTube rape chant last year sent a chill through universities, forcing a serious re-examination of everything from harassment to assault.
There's a conversation happening around sexual violence and rape culture that wasn't happening a year ago.
The crisis at her university came to a crux during 1 month last winter. For Roy, it was deeply personal. She was campaigning then for re-election, her opponents chafing at her apparent success.
During the campaign, I received an anonymous email with a Word document that was titled "Something You Should Know."
On Facebook, 5 guys were chatting about Anne-Marie, 4 of them executives on the student council.
I think the line that struck me the most in that conversation was, "Someone should punish her with their shaft." That for me was really shocking. There were also talking about, me sucking some of the penises of the men that were involved in the conversation, on the presidential chair. So basically using my title, my office, my work environment as, props in this scene of sexual assault. It made me, when I read the conversation for the first time, I felt really nauseous and my mind was racing and going to a million different places.
Once outed, they apologized, but her story gained steam through a blogger, finally reaching the president of University of Ottawa, Alan Rock. He was trying to contain another explosive story, allegations of sexual assault involving the varsity hockey team, the Gee-Gees.
Alan Rock personally gave me a call the Friday before the hockey team story broke out. I think he was horrified, and I'm sure that he was beginning to be seriously concerned for the university's reputation.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Thunder Bay.
The hockey scandal began in Thunder Bay, Ontario, where the Ottawa Gee-Gees were on a road trip. Hockey's huge here. Varsity games regularly pull in 3,000 fans. The hometown squad, Lakehead University's Thunderwolves, are local heroes, and a face-off was bound to be keen competition. Saturday, February 1st, was the second matchup of a 2-game weekend. The Gee-Gees narrowly outscored the Thunderwolves in overtime, adding to their win Friday. The Ottawa players were ready for a victory party before their flight home the next day. Post-game, some of the Gee-Gees ended up at a Thunder Bay club. One player had gone online to a dating site called Tinder, where he hooked up with a young woman from Thunder Bay. Later, the two grabbed a taxi back to the team's hotel. And here's where some of the Gee-Gees got caught up in a boozy night, which ended in scandal.
No one knows exactly what happened in the next few hours except those inside that room. But we get an indication from a source we spoke to close to the team. We're told there was drinking and that the player and the young woman who hooked up had sex, but at some point they weren't alone. First, a roommate and then another player were in that room too.
Later, the girl called a friend, to pick her up. The two talked for an hour outside the hotel before the girlfriend went to the lobby, confronted the coach, Rial Paymont, and told him there'd been a serious problem. She wanted a response, penalties for some of the players. No one wanted to go to police. That would change.
At that point, sources tell us, the coach tried to handle it privately, making his own inquiries, benching players. He tried to mediate, thinking, we're told, that he was doing it in the best interests of everyone. But it all blew up 3 weeks later, when a third party, we're told the girl's friend, alerted the university.
In the president's office, red flags. Alan Rock turned back from a personal trip overseas, and the university passed on what they'd been told to Thunder Bay police. Rock, a former justice minister, seized on the potential damage to his university, urging senior staff in an internal email to get in front of it. I do not believe there's a rape culture on campus, but I think there are hard questions to ask. Remember, he was now trying to contain 2 complaints of sexual misconduct, Anne-Marie Roy and the Gigis.
We have to ask how well we send the message that all forms of sexualized violence are unacceptable and profoundly repugnant to our core values and beliefs as a university community.
Together with U of O Chancellor Michael Jean, the university launches a task force on respect and equality. But there's more. The Gigis are benched indefinitely. The coach is suspended, and U Ottawa braces for the blow. The story trends nationally on Twitter, and the emails fly from alumni, many critical, some supportive.
It seems rape culture is very prevalent. For shame.
The actions reflect political correctness run amok, reprehensible.
I am very happy the university is taking this matter very seriously.
The focus now shifts to the criminal investigation, led by Thunder Bay Police. Chris Adams, the executive officer, confirms the young woman has agreed to cooperate with police, a turning point in the investigation.
Well, I think initially there was some reluctance. The victim was, like any victim, very much in a bit of shock, going through a lot.
Like what, typically?
It's humiliation, sometimes doubt, sometimes it's a question of fear in coming forward with that information, how they're going to be judged.
Key to any prosecution of sexual assault, including this one, is the question of who said yes or no.
Consent is very critical in all of this, and really that's what it comes back to.
And can a person consent and then withdraw consent as something progresses and still be a sexual assault?
Absolutely. You could be in the middle of a situation and realize that it's going in a direction you don't want it to go.
After a 6-month investigation, police charge 2 players, the Gigis captain, David Fouché, and assistant captain, Guillaume Donovan, with sexual assault.
For the most part, the Gigi hockey players have remained silent publicly. Privately, they are bitter and angry. A full roster went up to play in Thunder Bay, yet only 2 were charged. Many more say they had nothing to do with the alleged incident, but they paid a heavy price.
Hello, can I speak to Trip Knox, please?
Enter Lawrence Greenspan, prominent Ottawa lawyer, avid hockey player, and U of O alumnus. He represents a dozen players who are considering suing the university.
They individually told me about incidents where they had been called out, either at a party or at a social gathering. Women had just come up to them and called them rapist to their face. All of them had been basically punished for what we understood at that point in time was the alleged sins of a few.
Greenspan argues after only 2 were charged, U of O should have reinstated the rest of the team. or offer up more evidence of misconduct. But the university won't back down, citing an unhealthy climate and widespread behavior that was disreputable and unbecoming. Chancellor Michael-Jean is even more explicit.
What we were just brutally reminded of this week is the pervasiveness of misogyny, of women hating, of words and attitudes that contribute to gendered and sexual violence. A continuum of violence that extends from locker room talk, where abuse may be spoken in jest, to actual physical violation.
I think those words are kind of scary, actually. Are we going to reprogram all males between 18 and 22 that go to Ottawa University who want to talk about women in the locker room? Really? There's political correctness, and then it's going too far, and I think that's going too far.
When we come back, U-Ottawa's not the only campus. The case of Lakehead University in Thunder Bay.
Do you think rape culture exists on Canadian campuses?
I do. I think it exists everywhere, online especially, on campus.
The rugged frontier city on the Great Lakes, Thunder Bay, became the setting for a surprising coincidence. Just as the Gigi's hockey scandal blew open, Lakehead University was managing its own very public crisis. A student exposed Lakehead in a letter to the paper.
I was in my third year in my program when I was sexually assaulted by a peer of mine.
We'll call her Alexandra. She asked us to protect her identity and change her voice. One day she was picking up a classmate to work at the university. He wasn't ready. He asked her to come inside to wait.
He threw me on the bed and threatened that if I left, he would tell everyone at school that I was a slut, or start all of these rumors, take pictures, and I didn't know what to do. I just froze.
What were you thinking?
Nothing. Honestly, it was just like it wasn't happening.
Did you tell him to stop?
Yes.
What was his reaction?
I'll never forget what he said. I told him to stop, and he said, "No, it's too nice and warm inside of you." And that line haunts me.
When it was over, he allowed Alexandra to leave, but then began her year of torment. She didn't want to press charges. What she wanted was to be moved out of the same class and write exams in a different room.
So you approached the chair, Human Resources, the dean, the ombudsman, and no one could really help you.
They didn't have a policy put in place to deal with victims of sexual assault. The only way I could get what I wanted was to go to the doctor on campus, who would then have to write that I would have a disability on my record.
A disability?
Mm-hmm. So they put on my record that I had a learning disability.
Frustrated, Alexandra graduated and then wrote that letter.
She found that there was no empathy and no sympathy for her in the process.
Lakehead's president, Dr. Brian Stevenson, says her story revealed a glaring gap in the way his university handled sexual misconduct.
I think we have to believe a student that comes and tells us that they were sexually assaulted.
Do you also believe the person who said I was unfairly accused?
All you're doing is you presume innocence of the student who's been accused, and you support the student who is saying that they had a sexual assault.
That's tricky ground, isn't it?
I don't see a contradiction, or I don't see any conflict.
But to prevent complaints, a first step, he says, is educating students about sexual assault law.
Telling them what the law is relatively simple. But asking them to change their behaviors and opinions about sex, that's a pretty tough nut to crack, isn't it?
Well, we have to start somewhere. This is not just a Thunder Bay, it's not just Ottawa, it's not just Canada. It's a broader set of issues that's happening all throughout North America.
Lakehead students are pushing forward with that education on sexual misconduct and consent.
Just to open up conversation about consent in the sexual context and how to...
Staff and faculty now have the authority to accommodate students like Alexandra.
I am so happy now that they have a code of conduct that includes sexual assault and talks about consent.
Varsity hockey has taken a bit of a bruising, playing into the belief held by some that sexual violence is a byproduct of sports culture, a place where some coaches occasionally warn their players to keep the two-on-ones on the ice. Bill McDonald, or Macker, is the bench boss of the Thunderwolves.
You saw what happened to the Ottawa GG's team. They're not playing this year. Do you worry about that kind of thing?
You're always worried because you don't know what's going to happen.
Do you think it's a fair responsibility on a coach to be responsible for them off the ice as well?
Yeah, to a point, I think so.
Where's the point?
The point is, you know, they're wearing the Thunderwolf logo. I'm responsible for it. When they leave the rink and they're with whoever, they're still responsible.
As part of a tightening up of student-athlete standards, Lakehead's Thunderwolves now have to sign on to a tougher, more explicit code of conduct.
You never really take the crest off your chest. People in town know who you are, and...
Luke Maw and Mike Quinnell are varsity veterans.
Do you think it's a fair accusation that this is part of hockey culture?
I don't think it's a fair accusation at all. When it comes down to it, they made a mistake. And when it comes down to it, there's probably 100 men that go out every weekend and they make that mistake. But these guys play university sports and they're in the spotlight. And
University of Ottawa may have been caught offside, but it's by no means unique. And when the story broke, Alan Rock and Brian Stevenson compared notes.
Given those same circumstances, would you have done the same thing?
I feel that he sent a very strong message to his community and to communities across the country about the tolerance level of sexual assault that universities have, which should be zero.
From booze to sex, starting campus life is all about tasting independence.
We got a long way to go.
In that highly charged atmosphere, universities are facing a staggering challenge to confront the idea, real or not, of rape culture on campus and convince their detractors they're on the right path. Susan Ormiston, CBC News, Ottawa.